The air buzzed with the sound of laughter, but not the kind that warms hearts. It was sharp, cutting, and dismissive, the kind that leaves scars. Inside a glass-walled rooftop bar in downtown New York, Daniel Hayes, a single dad and war veteran, stood silently as a circle of polished men in suits raised their glasses. At the center of it all was Ethan Drake, the young billionaire CEO of Drake Aviation. Ethan was the kind of man whose ego walked into the room before he did. "You?" Ethan pointed his champagne glass toward Daniel, his lips curling into a mocking grin. "You really think you could fly my newest helicopter? Please, the last time you touched a control stick, dinosaurs were probably roaming the earth." The men around him burst into laughter. Daniel clenched his jaw but didn't reply. He wasn't dressed like no tailored Armani, no designer watches, just a faded button-down, jeans, and boots that still carried the dust of his construction job. His 10-year-old daughter, Lily, was waiting for him at home. He had promised her ice cream tonight, but when a friend had dragged him here for a business opportunity, Daniel hadn't expected humiliation. Ethan leaned closer, eyes glinting with arrogance. "Tell you what, old man, fly my prototype helicopter tomorrow morning, prove you can handle Ida, and I'll marry you myself." The crowd erupted in laughter again. It was meant as a cruel joke, but Daniel didn't flinch. His eyes, hardened by battles fought in deserts far away, didn't waver. "You shouldn't joke about things you don't understand," Daniel said calmly. His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too much, endured too much. The room grew quiet for a split second, then Ethan scoffed. "What's the matter, soldier? Afraid?" Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked out, his boots echoing against the marble floor. The laughter followed him like a shadow, but Daniel had learned long ago shadows don't break men. Chapter 2. At the weight of the past. Back in his modest apartment, Daniel tucked Lily into bed, her blonde curls spread across the pillow like a halo. She looked at him with those big curious eyes, always asking questions. "Daddy," she whispered, "why don't people believe in you?" Daniel froze. The question pierced deeper than any battlefield wound. He forced a smile. "Because sometimes, sweetheart, people only see what's on the outside. They don't know the battles we've already won." Lily smiled sleepily. "But I believe in you." Her tiny hand squeezed his, and for the first time that day, Daniel felt peace. What Ethan Drake didn't know was that Daniel had been one of the most skilled helicopter pilots in the Army. He had flown missions in Iraq and Afghanistan, rescuing wounded soldiers under enemy fire. He had medals, sure, but they didn't pay bills. When his wife died 5 years ago, Daniel left the Army to raise Lily alone. His military skills meant little in the civilian world. To the world, he was just another struggling single dad. To Lily, he was everything. Chapter 3. At the challenge. The next morning, Daniel stood at Drake Aviation's private airfield. The sleek prototype helicopter gleamed under the sun, its black metal frame polished to perfection. A crowd had gathered of reporters, executives, investors, and of course, Ethan Drake, wearing his signature smirk. Well, Ethan said, adjusting his designer sunglasses. "Didn't think you'd actually show." Daniel ignored him and walked toward the machine. As his hands brushed the controls, memories surged back at the vibration of blades, the smell of jet fuel, the pounding of his heart during combat missions. He belonged here. But then a voice cut through the air, an urgent shout. "Fire! There's a fire in the hangar!" Everyone turned. Black smoke billowed from a nearby building. A maintenance worker stumbled out, screaming, my son is trapped inside." Panic erupted. Security rushed to evacuate. Ethan froze, shouting orders but offering no action. The father of the trapped boy dropped to his knees, begging for help. Without hesitation, Daniel ran toward the smoke. Chapter 4. At the rescue. Inside the hangar, flames licked the walls, thick smoke clouding the air. Daniel covered his mouth with his sleeve and listened for the faintest sound. Then he heard Ida, a child's cry. He pushed through the smoke, his heart pounding. Memories of past rescues flashed in his mind, pulling wounded soldiers from burning vehicles, flying through gunfire to save lives. There under a collapsed beam, a boy, maybe 8 years old, crying, terrified. Daniel lifted the beam with all his strength. Ignoring the searing heat, he scooped the boy into his arms and stumbled back through the fire, lungs screaming for air. Just as the flames roared higher, Daniel burst through the hangar doors, collapsing onto the grass with the boy safe in his arms. The crowd gasped, cameras clicked, reporters whispered. Ethan stood frozen, his smirk gone. For the first time, he looked at Daniel not with mockery but with awe. Chapter 5 At the Secret Power. Paramedics rushed in to check the boy, who clung to Daniel, sobbing, "Thank you, sir, thank you." Daniel patted his back gently. "You're safe now, buddy." The boy's father fell at Daniel's feet, tears streaming down his face. "I owe you everything. You saved my son." The crowd erupted into applause. Investors whispered among themselves, "This man, this single dad veteran, had done what no amount of money or power could have accomplished." Ethan swallowed hard. For once, words failed him. Daniel stood, brushing soot off his shirt. He turned to Ethan, his eyes calm but piercing. "You said yesterday this was a joke. But life isn't a joke. Some of us don't have billions or shiny toys, but we have something you'll never buy: courage and love." The words hung in the air, heavier than any mockery. Chapter 6 At a flight. Silence stretched. Then, slowly, Daniel walked back to the helicopter. He climbed in, adjusted the controls like second nature, and fired up the engine. The blades roared to life, cutting through the stunned silence of the crowd. Smoothly, effortlessly, Daniel lifted the helicopter off the ground. It hovered, then soared into the sky, gliding with precision and grace. The crowd erupted in cheers. Reporters scrambled for headlines. Investors nodded, impressed. And Ethan Drake? He stood frozen, watching his billion-dollar machine bow to the steady hands of the man he had mocked. When Daniel landed, the applause was thunderous. Chapter 7 At the Real Proposal. Ethan approached slowly, his arrogance stripped away. His voice cracked slightly as he spoke. "A broken bar. I underestimated you." Daniel didn't gloat. He simply looked at him and said, "You don't have to marry me, Ethan, but you do need to learn respect. Not for me, for everyone you think is beneath you." The investors, journalists, and workers around them nodded. Ethan lowered his head. For the first time, the billionaire looked small. Lily, who had been brought to the airfield by a friend, ran into Daniel's arms. "Daddy, you were amazing." He hugged her tight, tears pricking his eyes. "I told you, sweetheart. People don't always see the battles we've won, but today they did." Chapter 8 At the Transformation. News spread like wildfire. Single dad veteran saves child. Stunned CEO was splashed across every major outlet. Daniel became a symbol not of arrogance, but of humility, courage, and love. Ethan Drake, humbled, offered Daniel a position at Drake Aviation as chief test pilot. Daniel accepted, not for fame, not for wealth, but to build a better future for Lily. But the real reward came not from money or recognition. It came from the little boy he had saved, who visited him weeks later with a crayon drawing. It showed Daniel flying a helicopter, a child waving happily from the ground. At the bottom were 3 simple words: "My hero forever." Chapter 9 At the Uplifting Ending. Months later, on a quiet Sunday, Daniel and Lily sat on their small balcony, eating ice cream as the sunset painted the sky. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. "Daddy, you're kind of like a superhero, aren't you?" Daniel chuckled softly. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a dad who tries to do the right thing." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Well, a broken bar, that's what superheroes do." Daniel kissed her forehead. For the first time in years, he felt whole, because the truth was simple. You don't need billions to be powerful. You don't need fame to be important. Sometimes, the greatest power in the world is love. And Daniel Hayes had it in abundance.